rapidly to have a chance, because as usual, Warlock has gotten slower, and the Garrote Rogue arguably has gotten faster because people can play it better. I don't know if that's silly to say, but it's just what I said at the time, and it feels right, so I'm going to say it.
Yeah, fair enough. I can see that overall. Lorinda just posting a little bit of a correction as well. J4 has improved his rogue win rate a little bit with the fully up-to-date numbers, where he's now 6 and 9 overall with the Garrote Rogue. But this is... he'd trade all of those wins in a heartbeat for one additional win here, I think, at the first port of call against Casie's Handlock.
Give me on my stats 100 losses if I can just take a win here. You'd be very happy with that. Already Swindle and Octobot for J4. So it's looking okay. Just nothing too much, nothing too crazy go on. No Shroud, which I think is, you know, the next best thing after a field... never mind. After a field contact, which, you know, there you go.
See if the Shroud hits. It does not really. Prize Plunderers are a decent card sometimes in the matchup, but usually more in kind of late game scenarios. So still missing that field contact. He has one more deliberate minion tutoring that he can get from the Swindle specifically. But after that, he's just going to be kind of waiting patiently for exactly a field contact at this point.
Muzzle their magic.
And Neophyte Swindle going to help him try and get there.
Hey.
Okay, job done. Now there's a huge Octo turn, and Casie at least does do something I've not seen too often, honestly, which is just get that Anetheron down super early with obviously its 1 mana cost effect. Which at least
with
for something to look at this turn, right? Something he has to at least respect.
Something to look at this turn, and basically several subsequent turns as well, because with that Raised Dead in hand, that thing is coming back over and over and over again if it actually gets killed and not frozen on this turn.
Look at this, though. His whole hand costs 2 mana.
It's quiet. Too quiet.
That's an upgrade. Probably.
Yeah, not sure if we will see the Ethels get used here.
Give me that. Not what I want.
J4 would love a Shadow Step right about now.
He would, yeah. Would happily trade that prep for the other 0 mana spell in a heartbeat.
Decision.
And that's about it, I think. Yep.
Yeah, I think decision point there was one Ethereal Log Merchant worthwhile. Just that one more draw for a Shadow Step. But yeah, did choose to hold on there. Still did a good job, right? Got halfway through the deck, killed off the Anetheron. We can see that it forced Casie onto a Soul Rend as opposed to just going for that Raised Dead again. But he will fall short of doing that now.
Here for the tour?
Yeah, indeed. Forced to be reactive there with the Soul Rend and the Mortal Coil, of course, doing things in the correct order. No reason to burn 1 extra card when you can just draw 1 extra card by doing it in that order. Rend first, Coil second. I think also we're quite clearly seeing pressure off Casie here, right? Like, I'm not saying there's no pressure on him, because of course he wants to make playoffs. He, as much as many players in this league, do have unfinished business with the World Championships. But I think this is more kind of the relaxed, instinctual snap play Casie that we've been used to seeing when he's been feeling good about himself in the early weeks of the season.
Interesting point. I'm just sat thinking about that Soul Rend, and you said about the ordering. He actually could have done it in the other way, right? Because he'd still get to draw an additional card with the Tour Guide, and then this turn he could tap into 10, right?
Wait, what are you talking about? He drew a card with the Mortal Coil instead of Mortal Coiling.
Oh, did he Sorry, okay, wind it back.
It's just literally better.
Yeah, no. No, I thought, yeah, okay, that's fine.
Dirty Tricks is going to proc here. I don't think that'll be any great surprise to Casie. Of course, he did get burned by Shenanigans a little bit earlier on, but since that was prepped out by J4, I think it's pretty confident at that point that it's going to be a Dirty Tricks, the card that is really doing the most for progressing J4's game plan. And now that Anetheron train can start to ride here for Casie, can keep getting those big threats down. But as long as there's a couple of these small minions on the other side, this is the weakness of Anetheron, right? It's really not that difficult to deal with in comparison to a giant.
Yeah, the weakness is it's weak and can get killed easy.
Yeah. Who is Anetheron, Raven? Rare opportunity for you to tell me something about
Oh,
World
you
of
might have
Warcraft.
tripped me up. Well, he's a Dreadlord for a start. What?
Oh, I wasn't even deliberate. Okay.
Well, I know he's a Dreadlord. I'm just not quite sure which one, because there's too many specific Dreadlords. So, yeah,
So
I do
disappointed.
apologize. Yeah, I know.
Based on my personal sample size now of actually asking you things about World of Warcraft, you know exactly nothing about World of Warcraft.
What?
It's true. I've asked you one question, lifetime, about WoW just
okay.
then, and you didn't know it.
Hey, loser!
The worst part is he doesn't even mention that he only wants me to know it to go, don't care. So, if anything, I'm the winner here.
It was kind of a win-win scenario for me in the end, wasn't it? Yeah.
J4 did about as much as he could do that turn. The big problem he has right now is just card generation, right? He can't get any card draw cooking without that second field contact or another swindle and such. Casie is getting there. A very quick 10 card or less, right? I think turn 7 is one of the faster ones I've seen of late.
Yeah, turn 7 is rapid, of course, aided by that soul rend that
Yep.
he did hit on that huge board state that came down. Something that you can think about, at least in matchups. I think there's two of them where you do have to think about it. One is Control Warrior / Big Warrior, and one is Warlock, where you make what I've referred to mentally, filed away in my head as the orange line, where you just kill some of your own minions on your field contact turn as you're playing your stuff. To play around Rancor in the case of the Warrior matchups and Soul Rend in the case of the Warlock matchup, because that if they don't get down to 10 cards or less, it's very hard for them to have that big counter pressure turn that really ends up winning the matchup. However, for J4 there, didn't have the option to do that because all of his resources with the 2-1s with the prize plunderers had to be allocated to dealing with the Anetheron on the other side, right, to be able to have an effective turn. So I don't think there's any fault there from J4 at all. Just so happened that Casie lined up a fantastic Soul Rend, which has allowed him to pressure nice and early in this matchup now.
Yeah, it looks like J4 has to piece together at least half a removal turn. He has Penflinger, Brain Freeze for the Giant, I imagine, and then can, at least try and get some trades done. The big problem is, though, as always, with no field contact and no card draw, there's no real way to go for most rogue players. And remember, J4 does not have the option of drawing a Kazakus, right? Which can help out in these kind of situations too, as like an alternate power turn that doesn't solely revolve around drawing cards.
Casie here, biggest decision I imagine is whether it's ever worth fitting in a tap here. Obviously, if you're playing a null, essentially your tap costs 1 mana, right? Because you can tap, get a 1 mana discount on your null in that position. But I think spacing this out as nicely as possible with the Flesh Giant that he knew he had remaining, the backfire made the most sense, and he gets to throw in a Cult Neophyte now, not only this turn, but the following turn as well. I think this is just going to be far too much pressure here for J4 to be able to blow through this. Yep,
Yeah, it is. I think that would have had to have been exactly field contact, with the first draw maybe being a Shadow Step, and even then it would have been a long shot, right? But that's the kind of draw he really needed there. He didn't hit, and I will say, I've been talking about it like pretty bad about Warlock in general, but if you're going to play it that fast, and I don't mean card speed, but actual game speed, then great. Like I said, turn 7, I think it was, that he got down to 10 cards or less, obviously with the help of that Soul Rend that you can see right now. And yeah, that activates the deck, and if you can do that fast enough, especially with some relatively early giants as well, then fantastic. Yeah, it's a great deck. It's got some big minions and a lot of pressure. But my problem is, I feel most of the time that doesn't happen, right? Like, that's the rarity that you can play a game to that extent as Warlock right now. But still, good win there for Casie, and it doesn't mean we are moving on to game number 2. Casey's going to be the one on the rogue this time, and J4 is going to be on this Demon Hunter.
Yes, and we've talked about it enough. The big deal at this point is that middle card right there in the graphic for you. Glide is the big factor when it comes up against Rogue. I do, again, want to express my support for the idea of just playing straight up OTK Demon Hunter in the current metagame. I personally do think this is the best way to go overall. J4 is choosing to go with a Rustrot Viper in a spot that has been a Magtherodon in some other people's list as well, and also not finding room for a single copy of Philosophy in the deck, which is fairly common in some other builds as well. I think long gone are the days where it's double Philosophy unless you are also playing Brutes in your deck, but I think a lot of people do still favor an individual copy in there. But instead, I think J4, yet again, this is thematic and it's consistent, right? Guild Trader in Rogue, Rustrot Viper in his Demon Hunter. What do these things have in common? They potentially beat Warrior, right? And that's the big fear.
I was going to go tradable.
True.
Tell me I'm wrong.
They obviously, the Rustrot Viper can interact very favorably with the Bulwark of Azeroth, snipe that away, allow you to activate your OTKs. The Guild Trader, as we were talking about, just gives you that big boost of spell damage that you might need to do something above the 42, 48 damage that you might have available to you otherwise. So I do certainly think J4, it's not a target Warrior lineup by any means, but I think he had some expectation coming into this week that Control Warrior and Big Warrior might be things that he had to deal with.
And also, he's one of the players who kind of put his money where his mouth is as well, right? Because he has Control Warrior in his lineup.
I talk about this all the time. I was going to let it slide for once, but I do think this is a mental dynamic that a lot of players fall victim to, is that if you are doing something yourself, you then tech against that thing because you expect other people to do it. And yes, I do think that's something that's gone through J4's mind as well.
Here diving into game number 2, Casie keeping the card. Field contact, yes. Of course. Why not? Before taking his time, though, although I imagine he's not... Is he really working out what he can do with these tradables, I guess, to like guarantee a turn with Tusk Piercer? Because that's where the deck starts to get complicated, is you don't just look at the card, especially the tradable cards, you look at like, well, what turn does this guarantee activate? Because it's one mana, draw a card. That's how you should look at the card in almost every circumstance with this deck, right?
Yep. And generally, if any, like honestly, I think OTK Demon Hunter or Quest Demon Hunter in general is a very, very good Mulligan training tool, because I think a lot of people sort of look at Mulligans on kind of a surface level and say, okay, these are some cheap cards that I can play in the early game. Cool, let's go with that. Whereas OTK Demon Hunter very deliberately forces you to say, okay, what do my turns look like, right? Like if I have a Tusk Piercer and one tradable in my hand, on turn 3, what does that mean? Well, it means that you can swing with the weapon, draw another tradable, trade the 2 tradables that you have now in hand, and you've drawn 3 cards, plus the one at the start of the turn, for 3 mana perfectly, therefore you've completed a quest step. So you actually have to think very deliberately about what each turn looks like with the cards that you're keeping. And I think that's actually a skill that you can then transplant into a bunch of other decks to improve your Mulligan skills in general.
And that's why I play Hunter. 1 drop on 1, 2 drop on 2. Let's go.
Coin Felmore on 1 every single time, baby.
I've been coining Felmores for years.
Turn 1 Felmore, they call him. Doesn't quite work, does it?
It's been turn 1-ing Felmores for years. Is that the sentence? Is that how words happen?
Okay, zombie chow, they call him.
He's been getting zombie chowed for years. Casie here, though, with a very good Shroud, getting hold of that Neophyte as well. Octobot, Field Contact. That looks like a starter pack for how to win with Rogue.
It does, yeah.
Especially in this matchup with the Neophyte. But there it is, Sol. Sitting in the middle of the hand, which is by far the worst place for J4. Some of the matchups you're not too bothered about necessarily outcasting Glide. In this one, you very much are.
Yeah, particularly with that Il'gynoth blocking on this turn, it's extremely awkward. But yeah, I do like this turn. You kind of see the dynamic I was talking about, where just keeping hold of the tradable allows him to line up these turns very nicely to be able to keep this up. Keeping tradables is like a super difficult thing to understand in OTK Demon Hunter overall, I think. But it's generally Generally, a tradable card is kept because you foresee a turn where 1 mana draw 1 card will help you complete a quest step, right? Very deliberately with the other cards that you're seeing. So you might have a Spectral Sight, you might have an Acrobatics, something like that you're ending up keeping. And the combination of that with 1 guaranteed tradable just guarantees that you complete that quest in a timely fashion.
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, where generally you look at the tradable cards as 1 mana draw a card, and then there's other ways where it's 1 mana complete your quest, right? Which is the way you look at it most of the time. I'm just really interested to see if next turn we're just going to see the good old coin Il'gynoth and go full tempo. Not going to happen, but I'd like to see it. It does feel like a problem though, right? I guess not with Casie only having 4 cards at the moment.
Yeah.
But this glide is, as we talk about often with Demon Hunter, pretty clutch in this matchup.
It is, and even though it's a 4-card hand, it's a 4-card Octobotted hand, so you would still be delighted. You would be punching the air if you got to glide that hand. So yeah, it is sufficiently awkward for J4, I think, but now we will see Casie doing his absolute level best to transform all of these 0 mana cards into full cost cards, reducing the punish of the glide a little bit as well, but also getting down that shadow step on the Cult Neophyte, which now means the only way a glide is ever playable is if it is already locked directly into Outcast position.
There is that.
Which also then means, where's the mana coming from to kill the field contact at that point if Glide were to come down this turn?
I grow impatient.
There is just Immolation Aura, so that's a bit of a saving grace here for J4. He has multiple Immolation Auras if he really needs them, but he doesn't. The problem is the follow-up isn't so great, is it? Acrobatics, of course, 4 mana, so even unlocking its out, or trying to unlock the Spectral through Outcast is just not going to happen in any way this turn, and maybe not even next turn either. Got a tough old hand there, hasn't he, J4?
Not pretty. Has to be a turn off. It's taking a clear turn for J4. And this means, honestly, Casie is going to have one of the smoothest games of Rogue up until this point imaginable. I don't think he'll quite believe his luck. Or rather, might be bemoaning the fact, like, where has this luck been the rest of the season up until this point? Why has my life had to be this stressful up until this point? Because this is just a super smooth game of Garrote Rogue against Demon Hunter so far.
It really is, isn't it? Casie just getting rid of cards. 9 cards left, 8 on the draw. There's 1 reduced to Garrote. There's 1 reduced to 0 Og Merchant. It's starting to line up awfully quickly. And look at that, Sol. J4's hand costs more again.
I grow
The disruption from Casie this game has been absurd, honestly. In a good way for Casie, of course. Il'gynoth.
Oh, it's just so miserable. I'm sat here quietly, like, trying to formulate a plan as best I can, but it just doesn't exist. Yeah, I think you have to give up on the disruption at this point and just say your own hand is just too bad, right? Like, even outside of the fact that you're not outcasting the glide and disrupting your opponent's game plan, most importantly, that hand just sucks and you need to exchange it for a different one and get on with your own quest game plan. At least, at the very least, try and race the Rogue from this position. Try and find now a second glide that you can put into outcast position and actually get the job done to disrupt the Rogue a little bit, because as it stood, he was just doing absolutely nothing.
Yeah, interested to see. I'm guessing Casie went +1/+1, but I think he did have draw card as an option as well for his Golem. And obviously him drawing cards equals good, but this board is fairly wide. No, he did go draw a card, okay. I think that was a close one.
Yeah, I think it makes sense, right? It's just recognition of your win condition at this point, and I don't think, you know, obviously +1/+1, push a bunch of damage, does kind of feel like winning, but, you know, J4 has the AoE cards necessary to be able to beat that kind of thing anyway, whereas I think Casie just feels so far ahead on the combo game plan that he's just linearly sticking to that game plan.
J4 can play Moarg, I-Beam for one, you know, get rid of Guild Trader, and then he will have the mana to Spectral. But the problem is, like, does that even really win him the game at that point? Bad enough, like you mentioned, that his opponent is getting to the point where it's very likely he's just going to Garrote combo him and he's going to die. But there's also just a massive board he has to face down as well. It's like, it's the best of both worlds with Rogue for some times, and we're seeing it right here in this game.
Pleasure doing business.
And look at the relative deck sizes. Like, in a vacuum, they should be relatively even just with the way the two decks are built. In reality, the reason this matchup is considered good for the Demon Hunter is because they have the tools to just massively increase the deck size of the Rogue in various positions as well, and actually be significantly ahead on that metric. As it stands, 7 cards to 18 is an indicator of an absolutely miserable game of Demon Hunter so far for J4.
Contact, 4 cards left. You can call this one Sol, but I imagine it's a next turn?
Certainly next turn, yeah.
Yeah, and that's why the Shadow Step's going to go on the... Oh, wait. Or is it?
Muzzle their magic.
Well, sorry, what were you expecting to be Shadow Steps?
No. It just... For a second on the spectator, it looked like he was potentially playing Octo and then Garrote or something. I was like, wait, what is he doing? So yeah, okay, sorry. It's fine. This is what I thought he was going to do. Step the Neophyte, replay, and just give himself that extra little layer of safety. And then with this setup, right, it's exactly the set of cards you want for the end game. Now if J4 again, mana increased. If he wants to play this Kurtrus, he can squeeze in the Immolation Aura, which leaves up the Kazakus. Means Casey's close to just being able to just kill him with the actual spell, Garrote, and not the bloods.
Yeah, I mean, Casie will have the easiest lethal of his life if J4 wants to play the Kurtrus this turn.
I'd be pretty confident about pulling off this one.
At the same time, if you're not going to play the Kurtrus this turn, like, how is that ever winning? The only world where J4 ever thinks he's winning here is that Field Contact is last card, right? Or at the very, very least bottom 2 with the cards that are remaining. But even then, the board has to be cleared this turn, and he has to be thinking about progressing some kind of immediate win the game next turn kind of play, right? To be able to back that up. That only comes from getting Kurtrus down. And if he gets Kurtrus down, he can't actually clear the board and heal in any meaningful way. So just not really seeing it this turn.
And these Neophytes have really carried this game here for Casie. They've just made every turn so much more awkward.
Yep.
As an example, that turn without the Neophytes, J4 would have a little bit more mana to say, work in a Fell Screen Blast, instead heal for a bit, actually clear the board and not have 3 power left over, still play the Kurtrus, still would have been a long shot, but it would have been a little bit better. And now Casie has to just not play the game.
This is so much more than is necessary. This is so extra from Casie this turn, but okay, fine.
I'm out of cards.
Your opponent's at 9!
Your opponent's at technically 6. Your 2 spells deal 4 each. That adds up to more than 6.
Yeah, Garrote's in.
He's going to draw, isn't
out with the Brain Freeze. Yeah, the Brain Freeze is already cast from Casey's perspective. We're just waiting for it to happen. Yep, there we go. Bleeds are going to come out to be able to finish the game. Maximum Demahe going through that turn, and Casie is going to go up to a 2-0 lead in the series. Again, just to give you a refresher, if you're just joining in, maybe you were paying attention before the broadcast, paying attention last night as we ended, you knew that Casie J4 was still potentially facing down relegation. That's not the case anymore. We have unfortunately relegated Wama, relegated Tice. They joined Boston and Floki, which means our relegations are set for the season, and Casie and J4 are not among them. That means both of these players are actually looking upwards. Outside shots at playoffs, chasing down RDU and Felkane. Casie in a slightly better position to do that than J4 because of the 1 point advantage he has over his opponent here on Saturday. So Casie picking up another big win here. What a turnaround. This is almost the Bly's story if he's able to clutch this one out and make it all the way to playoffs. And we know how that ended up for Bly's. Even though it eventually ended in heartbreak, it did look for a moment like he was going to make the run all the way to the World Championship.
Yeah, and I think part of that as well is something I respect a lot from Casie is the attitude sort of decision a few weeks ago when he was looking like almost guaranteed relegation if the course kept straight sort of thing of what he was doing so far in that season. He said, you know what? If I get relegated, that sucks, terrible, but I'm going to give it my best shot for the past few weeks. And this is what it can look like, right? Like, he's now safe from relegation, as you mentioned. He's got a shot at playoffs. Everything is looking up. And J4, of course, wants to make it to playoffs, or at least give it a good shot in his first season as a Grandmaster here. We are going to be going into game number 3. And as you've been seeing on the screen, while Salt and myself have been breaking this down for you, it's going to be the Face Hunter from Casie going up against the Warlock from J4. So J4 deciding to get the difficult one over and done with first.
Yeah, why not, right? If you've got that uphill battle, then just break it out and see if you can get the difficult part done first. And this is a difficult part now because it's very hard to get straight up instant stability coming from the handlock now, because you used to be able to just win board quite quickly, and by the time you used to be able to clear board fairly effectively, and then by the time you'd got that board clear, you probably had a playable giant hanging around in your hand at some point, right? Between all the touches and drain souls and life taps and quest completions that you'd had at that point, and then you could potentially try and counter swing. Now, again, because of those slowed down quest procs and because of the increased mana cost of the giant, that is significantly more difficult to do in an aggro matchup against the likes of Face Hunter. So it more often than not now, I would say, comes down to just landing a big soul rend and then using that to kind of do what Casie did in his matchup, scythe through a huge part of your deck, get into that 10 cards or less zone, and then just start hammering away with the scavengers and the bristlebacks.
We're going to see if it's going to pay off here for Casie here in the Mulligan. A brawler. And I was going to say, not necessarily the best. You're looking for the slightly stronger openings here. Let me just check the notes. Yeah, such as Imprisoned Felmore, a must-bring card in Hunter. Okay, yeah, makes sense. And there it is, see? Ask and you shall receive.
One drop off the top? Yeah, okay. So I was just about to say, Casie saw that Mulligan several seconds before we did, and he reacted initially with disgust, which is kind of something I would agree with. Like, yes, Felmore on 2 was fine, but without a 1-drop to play on 1, he would, I think, find himself in trouble.
I feel sick.
It's not going well for you, Raven, is it?
I feel
You're having a mare, mate. I'm sorry. Felmore's losing this battle. But yeah, having picked up the 1-drop off the top from the Warpating, I think that's where you saw the OK symbol come out from Casie, and suddenly he was feeling a lot happier about proceedings. And look at all this damage just getting dunked into J4's face.
I actually think I understand why the Felmore came down a little bit later. Based on this specific opening, I believe he actually wants Felmore specifically to hit lethal damage. So he's just got to time it well to really show off Felmore's talents.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even like there's a particularly interaction with Soul Rend that he's playing around, right? Because Soul Rend would be coined and played this turn, most likely, right, if it was in hand. So even if Felmore played on the previous turn, would not have yet woken up to be caught in the Soul Rend. So I think, he's just valuing stats in play right now, being able to go face.
And in a weird way, getting damage from the Walpertingers now, while they're small but they come out early, and also arguably forcing a Soul Rend, because at this point, with the timing, if J4 presses Soul Rend on turn 4, he normally passes the turn, right? You clear the board and pass, which gives Casie a whole nother turn to rebuild a board, hero power again, or push more damage. So it's tough, right? Soul Rend generally seen as a great anti-aggro tool, but if you've got no follow-up and the aggro deck has, okay, you survived one turn longer, but you're still dead, right? Like, that's the case. That's the thing you can often run into, especially against Hunter.
Nope, doesn't find it. Speaking of timing, by the way, beautiful timing with the Marsul Cub from Casie. He floated 1 mana on the previous turn, did not play a Marsul Cub, because that, as I was talking about, that's when Soul Rend would have come out. Would have been coin, Soul Rend on that turn. However, since he didn't see coin Soul Rend, he knew it wasn't there, right? Because there is no world on Earth in which your opponent does not coin Soul Rend there if they had it. So from that point onwards, he's just been loading out the board as aggressively as he possibly could.
I will just throw it out there as well. Casie had to float a mana because the Felmore actually went into the 1/1 and he had Rhino. And you know what? You disrespect Felmore, he'll disrespect you. So, you know, you ask for that one yourself.
Sure.
Dildo, and this is the problem. And you can kind of see the same issue, right? Of, yes, of course, Casie would be a bit further behind here. But generally speaking, even if there was a Soul Rend, J4 would still be in trouble, right? It's not like the Soul Rend saved him the game and wins him the game.
No, but it would have, I don't know, let's make up a number, saved him 10 health at the very least. And he'd be 6 cards deeper in his deck, right? He'd be down to 12 cards.
And yeah, like I said,
that's a world of difference.
It definitely gave him more of a chance, but I think generally people think it's Soul Rend or nothing to win or lose the game, and it's like it requires more than that in that matchup specifically because Hunter has the damage. But regardless, in the blink of an eye, that game and that series is over. Casie dominated there, taking it all 3-0. And yeah, looking really good there for Casie. And looks to be maybe a little bit more back to older Casie that we're a little bit more used to. Maybe a little bit less stressed out Casie, which will be a good thing. J4 taking the loss there, but again, it's important to note that both of those players are safe from relegation due to what happened in the previous matches with Wama and Tice taking a loss. So even though it's a shame to see J4 take the loss, he's still probably happy with the outcome of the day so far.
Yeah, so just to wrap it all up, put a bow on it for you. As Raven said, that is the end of J4's season, but it's not the end of J4 as a Grandmaster. He was already safe before he even had to play a card in that matchup because of the way that various other results in the day went. It does mean, however, that he now has no shot at playoffs, and he will be finishing in one of those frustrating mid-table positions, which means he just gets to look forward now.